Hello guys, welcome back to our anime explainer. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Soul Land 2 Peerless Tang Men based on novel. So let's start. Hui Yuhao rarely returned to his room. He spent most of his time on the mountain peak, looking at the sea of clouds and reminiscing over his teacher, who had passed away. He also sensed the changes in his body. This carried on until I'm back. A bright bluish-gold light appeared in the sky. Hui Yuhao subconsciously lifted his head to look at it, and saw Wang Dong descending from the sky towards him. Hui Yuhao opened his mouth and said, "Why did you return from the sky? Can you fly so high using your martial soul?" Conservative estimates put the clear sky peak at 3,000 meters high. Even a titled Doluor can't fly so high in the air. It might be possible if a titled Doluor used a Class 9 flying type soul tool. The higher the sky, the thinner the air. Soul masters need to breathe as they regulate their soul power. Even if your martial soul has wings, you can't possibly fly so high. Wang Dong laughed mysteriously. This is a secret of the Clear Sky sect. I can't tell you unless you're one of us. Hui Yuhao said, if I hadn't joined the Tang sect, I could have joined the Clear Sky sect. However, I evidently can't join your sect now. Wang Dong replied, that doesn't have to be the case. There might be some other way in the future. Let's not talk about that though. Did you miss me these few days I was gone? Hui Yuhao laughed. Why would I miss you? You're not even a girl. If you introduce your sister to me, I might miss her instead. Wang Dong snorted. Look at how you choose lust over friendship. Hui Yuhao chortled. So what? What benefits have you gained from this trip? Wang Dong straightened both his index and middle fingers. Settled. Hui Yuhao asked, what soul skill? Wang Dong replied, it's a secret. You'll know when you return from the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. You just need to know that it's very strong. Hui Yuhao laughed mysteriously and said, all right, it's fine if you don't tell me. I also have a secret, but I'm not sure whether you're interested in listening to it. What secret? Wang Dong was curious as he looked at him. Hui Yuhao mimicked his words. You'll know when I return from the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. You just need to know that it's very strong, you. Wang Dong snorted furiously. I went all the way to the Sun Moon Empire to find you. Did you think it was easy? You're still playing such a trick on me. Are you still human? Hui Yuhao found it very amusing when he saw Wang Dong putting his hands on his waist with a displeased look. All right, I'll show you. Snow Lady, come out. Hui Yuhao called, and an orange gold light suddenly flashed. The Snow Lady flew out, and her white undergarment moved slightly. She floated between Hui Yuhao and Wang Dong while facing the latter. When the Snow Lady appeared, Wang Dong was stunned. As he saw her, the look in his eyes became gentler. Wow, what a cute lady. What's going on? Wang Dong asked as he reached out to touch her. No, Hui Yuhao warned him. After what had happened to Tai Tan, he was afraid that she would hurt Wang Dong. She wasn't harmless. Even if she didn't use soul skills along with Hui Yuhao, she was still comparable to a soul king on her own. She was even at the level of a soul king with the ultimate ice. However, Hui Yuhao was astonished to discover that the Snow Lady wasn't resistant towards Wang Dong. She allowed him to touch her delicate face. After that, she crawled her way into his arms and allowed him to carry her. She took 1 second to win Wang Dong over. Wang Dong looked like a girl from the way he looked at her. She's too cute. Her skin is so smooth. It's very nice to touch. Give me a kiss. As he spoke, he placed her in front of his lips and pecked her cheek. The Snow Lady laughed and didn't resist. She returned his kiss. Wang Dong twisted his head suddenly and allowed her to peck his cheek. He also said very sternly, you can't kiss there. Men and women can't be in such close contact. Hui Yuhao was amused. You've already hugged and kissed her before you told her that men and women can't be in such close contact. What's going on, Snow Lady? You're so young, but you've already set your eyes on handsome guys. You don't even want your daddy now, daddy. You're her daddy. Wang Dong's eyes widened, and he shot Hui Yuhao a weird look. If Hui Yuhao had to describe this look, he would say that it was aggressive. Why are you so agitated? It's just her way of referring to me. Snow Lady, come back. Hui Yuhao was slightly jealous. He was a little unhappy seeing how close the Snow Lady and Wang Dong were. Wang Dong let go of her and allowed her to fly back into Hui Yuhao's arms. After that, he took a step in front of him and stared at him furiously. His voice was trembling as he asked, "When did you have a daughter? Tell me what's wrong with you, Wang Dong?" Hui Yuhao asked, confused. Wang Dong grabbed his collar. "Tell me, is it because of Ju Zi? You are letting me and my sister down." Hui Yuhao was puzzled. "What nonsense are you blabbering about? What does this have to do with your sister or Ju Zi? Didn't you hear what I called her, Snow Lady?" Wang Dong was stunned. Hui Yuhao now recognized a problem. Although he had been very honest to the sect masters, there were many things he hadn't told Wang Dong. He was a little apologetic right now. "There are some things that I need to tell you." Wang Dong's face turned a little pale, and he took 2 steps back. "I don't want to listen to you. Don't tell me." After he finished speaking, he ran towards Clear Sky Castle. "What's going on?" Hui Yuhao felt like he was going blank. Why was Wang Dong so abnormal? He couldn't just let Wang Dong run away, however, and thus he pursued him. The Snow Lady offered him help. She pointed forward, and a streak of deep blue light flashed. The gate of Clear Sky Castle was frozen shut. Wang Dong seemed to have realized something. He stopped and looked at Hui Yuhao before glancing at the Snow Lady. He said, "All right, tell me." Hui Yuhao quickly came in front of him and explained everything between him and the Snow Empress, as well as his teacher. He even recounted how he had met the Ice Empress in the extreme north. He only excluded the secret regarding the Sky Dream Iceworm. Wang Dong was shocked as he listened to Hui Yuhao's explanations. "Are you saying that your second martial soul isn't innate? It only became your second martial soul after you fused with the Ice Jade Empress Scorpion. And 2 of the 3 heavenly kings are in your body. Heavens! So it's like that. You've been keeping it a secret for a long time." Hui Yuhao laughed bitterly. "Wang Dong, don't be angry. Think about it. If you were me, could you tell this secret to anyone? I'm scared of being dissected. Everything else aside, just the soul bones I possess are already very valuable." Wang Dong calmed down. "I'm not angry," he refuted immediately. "You're just like the weather in April, changing all the time. Were you fooling me just now? What can you do if I'm fooling around with you?" Wang Dong answered righteously, "You win." Hui Yuhao was suddenly reminded of the helplessness Tai Tan felt when he faced the Snow Lady. Spirit, interesting. I didn't know that soul masters could possess such a spirit apart from soul rings and soul bones. Yuhao, are you confident in your ability to create another one? Wang Dong asked. Hui Yuhao said, theoretically speaking, it's possible, and it won't be as dangerous as the Snow Lady. After all, the strength of the Snow Empress was too great. In addition, it happened because of some misfortune. Even so, one will have to pay a huge price in terms of his spiritual power if he wants to fuse with a spirit. From my calculations, it will be more difficult to fuse and contract a spirit the stronger it is. Do you want to try? Wang Dong was eager as he replied, of course. Don't forget that I have twin martial souls too. If you can fuse with a 700,000-year Snow Empress, why can't I fuse with a spirit that's of lower cultivation and suits me? Hui Yuhao nodded agreement and said, we need to try first. Wang Dong replied, I'll tell eldest and second uncle when I return. I'll ask them not to add soul rings for the disciples who are at their bottlenecks. We'll find some soul beasts who are dying. Many of them die because they can't break through their bottlenecks. I'm sure it won't be that difficult to find some. Soul beasts' bottlenecks didn't just occur when they were at the 100,000-year level. For lower-level soul beasts, every 100 years represented a barrier they had to cross. This barrier would then continue to every 1,000 years, and slowly advance to 10,000 years before reaching 100,000 years. For every 100,000 years, the difficulty of improving would escalate. Otherwise, those soul beasts who had existed for a long time would all be at the 100,000-year level. Hui Yuhao was comforted. If we can use such a method to resolve the dilemma between soul masters and soul beasts, it'll be very good. Even if this can't resolve the dilemma completely, I'm sure it'll alleviate the situation. Wang Dong had returned after successfully obtaining his 6th soul ring. This also meant that they were going to leave Clear Sky Castle. After bidding farewell to Niu Tian and Tai Tan, the two of them descended from Clear Sky Peak. They proceeded south, and finally bade goodbye to each other at the center between the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy and Shrek Academy. They weren't so reluctant to separate this time compared to the previous time. After all, Hu Yuhao only had a few months left in the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. After those few months, he would return to Shrek. For some reason, Hu Yuhao felt that Wang Dong was acting very mysteriously when they separated. He was even a little coy, and watched him with a weird expression. However, he didn't think about it too much, and told most of his secrets to Wang Dong. To him, it was a form of release. Just like the two sect masters had said, he was able to survive on his own with the Snow Emperor spirit. As long as he continued to work hard, his abilities would increase faster and faster. After he gathered all 5 soul rings for his second martial soul, Hu Yuhao's soul power had also managed to increase. His cultivation speed was also increasing during this period of time. Although he couldn't compare to Wang Dong yet, the influence his ultimate martial soul had on his cultivation had dropped after he had obtained the Snow Lady. After turning back to look at Wang Dong as he left, Hu Yuhao activated his flying-type soul tool and flew back to the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. Before leaving, he had one more important thing to do. The last few months would be very important. Wang Dong looked back just as Hu Yuhao did. He turned back to look into the distance, and a red glow appeared on his face. He really is a fool. As he spoke, he retrieved a pouch and recalled what Niu Qian had said to him before he left the Clear Sky sect. Wang Dong, both of us think that Hu Yuhao is a decent young man. He's much more mature than most others of the same age, and his feelings for you are true. However, whether both of you can reach that stage will depend on your affinities. If both of you reach that stage one day, give him this pouch. I didn't make it. It was personally made by your biological father. Your father said that someone is only fit to be with you if they can complete what's stated in the pouch. When will my father return? Why can't I remember his appearance? I'm not sure either. However, I'm certain that your parents will come back when you set up a family. Then I shall do it earlier. You can't. You can't play with your lifelong happiness. Keep the pouch. Remember not to peek at it. Your father sealed it with his spiritual power. You won't be able to see the contents. As he shook the blue pouch, Wang Dong was curious. What's inside this pouch? Why must Yu Hao see it? What does my father want? As he thought to that point, he was evidently unhappy. My parents have never returned to see me, but they're still meddling in my affairs. Although he thought this way, he still put the pouch away carefully. I wonder whether I can give this pouch to him when he returns from the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy. As he thought up to that point, his ears started to turn red. When Hu Yuhao returned to the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy, Lin Jiayi heaved a sigh of relief. He was initially anxious, because Hu Yuhao had been gone for a long time without returning. After Hu Yuhao returned, he reported it to Jing Hongchen. Jing Hongchen hadn't had the mood to deal with matters in the academy recently. The competition for the throne had reached a critical moment. Although the Crown Prince held a big advantage, his disadvantage was also very obvious. As a cripple, he would damage the reputation of the empire. His competitors attacked this point, and all the while, the emperor's physical condition was getting worse and worse. That was why Jing Hongchen's only wish at this point was for the student exchange to be completed smoothly and safely. He didn't want to pull any tricks at this moment, as he needed to wait until matters regarding the Crown Prince were settled. He didn't make his choices easily, but he had to obtain final victory once he made his decision. After returning to the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy, Hu Yuhao started living a peaceful life. However, the pace of his life was evidently faster. Xian Zuan noticed this, since he was Hu Yuhao's teacher. Hu Yuhao usually used ordinary metals when he researched and created soul tools. He couldn't really bear to use the rare metals he had obtained from the illustrious Virtue Hall. However, Xian Zuan now saw that Hu Yuhao was starting to use all types of rare metals when creating soul tools. He even requested his teacher's help to create some alloys. Teacher Xian. Xian Zuan was doing his routine inspection in the illustrious Virtue Hall. When he walked past Hu Yuhao's table, he was stopped. He revealed a smile on his face and said, Yuhao, you haven't proactively talked to me in more than a month. You finally have something to ask me. Hu Yuhao appeared fatigued, but there was a vibrant look in his eyes. Teacher Xian, can I make a trip to your office later tonight? Our exchange is about to end and I have some things to tell you. Xian Zuan was stunned for a moment. Yes. The exchange was indeed about to end. Although he hadn't interacted much with Hu Yuhao over the past few months, he could tell how persistent Hu Yuhao was in his research and creation of soul tools. Furthermore, he was also a very outstanding soul master. Which teacher wouldn't like a student that was like him, all right? He didn't even hesitate, and agreed to Hu Yuhao's request immediately. Hu Yuhao smiled and was filled with confidence. It was only noon, but he tidied up his laboratory desk a bit. After scanning his surroundings, he bowed goodbye to Xian Zuan and left the laboratory. He was going to leave in another 2 days. Before he left, he had to settle that important matter. I've finally found you. Let's see where you can run. As he left the illustrious Virtue Hall, however, Hu Yuhao ran into trouble. Jing Ziyan seemed to harbor ill intentions as she looked at him. Not far from her, a cool-looking Ji Juechen was wielding his extraterrestrial meteoric sword while glancing at Hu Yuhao. Hu Yuhao laughed bitterly. Guys, I don't want to fight today. I'm very tired. I haven't rested in months. Can the two of you let me off this time? You're going to leave. Jing Ziyan's aggressive look disappeared, and she looked at Hu Yuhao doubtfully. Ji Juechen also put down his sword and watched Hu Yuhao intently. Yes, our exchange is going to end. In 2 days, I'll be returning to Shrek Academy. Although the two of you are annoying, I've regarded you as my friends. That's why I'm not being perfunctory. Before I leave, I'll teach both of you a good lesson. Hu Yuhao said seriously. Jing Ziyan furrowed her brow, while Ji Juechen turned around and left. He stopped harassing him. Jing Ziyan glanced at Hu Yuhao before following Ji Juechen away. What's this? Hu Yuhao said furiously, you don't even say anything to me. At least give me a sending off. However, Jing Ziyan and Ji Juechen didn't bother with him. They quickened their footsteps, as if they had something important to attend to, two heartless people. Hu Yuhao snapped. He was stunned to find out that he was a little reluctant to leave after 2 years in this place. Even though this was an enemy camp, he had had many memorable moments here. Teacher Xian, Cuckoo, Zimu and the two of them. There was also Ju Zi. Even though he spent all his effort on cultivating and learning tirelessly in the Sun Moon Imperial Soul Engineering Academy, which was the rival of Shrek Academy, he still had some feelings for this place after 2 years. He wouldn't miss the academy, but the people. After he returned to his room, he didn't meditate. He collapsed onto his bed and shut his eyes before he fell into a deep sleep. He had been very exhausted over the past few months. He needed a good rest. He completely blacked out as he slept. It was only when he heard a knock on his door that he woke up. Who's that? He rubbed his eyes and forced himself up from his bed. He was a little lethargic. He knew that it was because he had overlaxed his body. It's me. An unpleasant yet familiar voice sounded. Hu Yuhao was jolted awake. He cursed when he saw the sky outside. He quickly crawled out of his bed and opened the door. Indeed, it was Xian Zuan who was standing outside. Teacher Xian, I'm sorry. I overslept. Hu Yuhao invited him in awkwardly. Xian Zuan didn't appear too angry. On the contrary, he was a little stunned and asked, You overslept? Yes. Hu Yuhao was apologetic as he nodded his head. The 2-year exchange was about to end, and Hu Yuhao was about to return to Shrek Academy. Xian Zuan felt a little lost. As he wasn't from the Sun Moon Empire, Xian Zuan didn't possess any ill feelings towards Hu Yuhao. The only thing in this world that could arouse his interest was soul tools. He actually admired Hu Yuhao's talent in the aspect of soul tools. Even though he knew it was impossible, he still hoped that Hu Yuhao would develop in this area. Tell me, why did you ask to see me? Xian Zuan looked at him and asked while standing where he was. It wasn't that he didn't want to find a place to sit. It was just that Hu Yuhao's room was too messy. There were all types of metal accessories strewn on the floor. It was much messier than the time Wang Dong had visited. Even his bed wasn't spared. Hu Yuhao used his legs to make a path before removing the clutter from a chair. Teacher Xian, take a seat. Xian Zuan furrowed his brow and said, Yuhao, you don't seem so untidy normally. Why is your room so messy? Hu Yuhao replied, I have no choice. I can only work on some things in my room if I want to keep them as secrets. What? Xian Zuan's interest was aroused. He smiled and asked, You wanted to see me today, so that you could show me your secret work. Hu Yuhao pondered for a moment, then freshened himself up completely. He circulated his spiritual power, and the lights in his spirit eyes flashed slightly. Teacher Xian, do you still remember our bet? Hui Yuhao asked. Xian Zuan replied, of course I do. Why? Can you come up with 10 items of that level? I am a man of my word. If you can, I will follow you wherever you want. Hui Yuhao shook his head and replied, I can't. However, I hope that you can give me pointers on 2 of my products. They are also the essence of my hard work after I came to the academy. At the same time, I hope that they can be of use to you. Xian Zuan's eyes brightened, and he sat up straight. Are you saying that you invented 2 new types of soul tools? Quick, let me see them. His passion for soul tools made him forget everything instantly. Hui Yuhao said, Teacher Xian, I can show you one of my 2 final products. I wish to take a look at my second product again. But I can't show you the first product here, because this place is too small, and it's also my secret. If you want to see it, we need to use a special method. What special method? Xian Zuan asked doubtfully. Xian Zuan was astonished as he asked, you can do that? Although he knew that Hui Yuhao was a spiritual type soul master, he was aware that he would need immense spiritual power to transfer an image with it. Hui Yuhao nodded and said, I can do it, but I'll need you to trust me before I can show you the image in your mind. Xian Zuan replied without hesitation. What are we waiting for then? Let's start. Hui Yuhao was the one who was stunned now. Teacher Xian, I'll need you to open your mind if I'm to do this. Aren't you afraid? Xian Zuan laughed and said, what's there to be afraid of? I've been your teacher for 2 years. If I don't understand your character by now, I'm not fit to be your teacher. Let's cut the crap and start. As he spoke, he'd already shut his eyes. Hui Yuhao's eyes flashed with a look of respect. He knew that he wouldn't open his spiritual sea for anyone. Dim golden light shone from Hui Yuhao's eyes, and the golden light became more and more intense. He was standing right in front of Xian Zuan. The entire room started to shine with strange and distorted spiritual undulations. Dim golden halos started to ripple outwards with Hui Yuhao's head as the center. Even his body gradually glowed with a dim layer of gold. After fusing with the Snow Emperor spirit, his spiritual power had ascended to another level. Even he didn't know what level. However, he could use new abilities. 2 streaks of golden lights shot out from his eyes. These lights appeared gentle, but they caused the room to be filled with a strange aura. Xian Zuan's body jerked a little. He only felt a strong force surging into his spiritual sea, and he wanted to resist it subconsciously. However, he could resist this urge as an 8-ringed soul doluor and a soul engineer. Even so, his guard wasn't completely down. He retracted his spiritual power to shield his spiritual origin. A human's spiritual power would slowly increase along with his soul power. After all, great strength could only be controlled by a high enough spiritual power. Xian Zuan was greatly invested in soul tool research and spent most of his day thinking. That was why his spiritual power was stronger than most soul engineers of the same class. However, he was shocked to discover that the spiritual power surging into his body wasn't any weaker than his own. Its spiritual aura managed to assimilate with him after encountering his spiritual aura. Xian Zuan clearly felt that he was under a great, all-around pressure after Hui Yuhao's spiritual power entered his spiritual sea. This also meant that he would be very passive if Hui Yuhao attacked him. However, this was only an if. Just as Xian Zuan was shocked, an image suddenly appeared in his mind. At the start, it was just a simple image. However, it was soon joined by others and formed a projection. It was a barren land surrounded by mountain rocks. The exact location couldn't be discerned from the projection. The surroundings were very quiet, and he was looking at the barren land from the sky. There was only one person here, Hui Yuhao. Hui Yuhao was standing on top of a small hill, peering into the sky. Xian Zuan was shocked to realize that there was a third eye on Hui Yuhao's forehead. He thought that he was seeing things initially, and quickly gathered his spiritual power for clarity. However, he then noticed the vertical eye shining with a golden light. It seemed like it was looking at him. A third eye. Don't tell me that his spirit eyes experienced a second awakening, just like the body sect. Even though he was a powerful soul engineer with 8 rings, his knowledge on this aspect of soul masters was limited. Before he could form any concrete thoughts, the projection changed again. Hui Yuhao lifted his right hand, revealing a huge blue sapphire ring on his index finger. 6 dazzling strips of starlight were shining on the surface of the ring. At this moment, Hu Yuhao had whipped out a human-shaped soul tool in front of him that actually looked presentable. How could he not be shocked? He even suspected that Hu Yuhao had stolen a peek at the illustrious Virtue Hall's confidential secrets. He couldn't believe that Hu Yuhao had successfully created a human-shaped soul tool. The reason was very simple: the size. Human-shaped soul tools weren't just an armor for soul masters. They were controlled internally, allowing them to move freely, just like the all-terrain exploration soul tool that Hu Yuhao had controlled before, which enabled them to attack and defend. All this required a large number of formation arrays to be combined, and a strong soul master to control the finished product. This human-shaped soul tool was too small. It was only 3.5 meters tall. How many formation arrays could it contain? It probably couldn't even perform simple flexible movements like a person. In the projection, Hu Yuhao walked slowly to the human-shaped soul tool. He activated it, and it started to experience changes from the head down. Its headpiece was removed, and its neck revealed a straight vertical line that extended all the way to its lower body. After that, it started to crack through the middle, revealing a hollow interior. Xian Zuan was even more confident of his judgment after seeing the empty space. Hu Yuhao wanted to step into the soul tool and control it from the inside. Xian Zuan relaxed a little. To him, this human-shaped soul tool would probably be controlled by Hu Yuhao from the inside, as if it were a huge suit of armor. It was very different from the real internal control he had thought of. Hu Yuhao indeed entered the soul tool, and the soul tool closed up, sealing him inside. After that, Xian Zuan wasn't observing from the sky anymore. He had 2 different perspectives now: one was close-range observation, and the other was from inside the soul tool. Hu Yuhao's arms weren't placed in the hollow arms of the soul tool. Instead, there were a few control joysticks and a series of buttons in front of him. Xian Zuan then saw Hu Yuhao lifting a joystick from the inside of the soul tool. After that, the back of the soul tool started to crack open, revealing 2 huge pairs of wings. After pressing a few buttons, 12 streaks of light shot out from the wings. The thrusting force of the wings propelled the metallic man into the sky. After flying for in the sky a while, the human-shaped soul tool landed on the ground. This time, it landed on flatter terrain. Xian Zuan was still looking at it from 2 perspectives. Inside the soul tool, he saw Hu Yuhao sitting cross-legged. The soul tool was 3.5 meters tall, and its back was more than a meter wide. It was evidently a tight fit to sit inside it like that, but it was manageable. Is he proving to me that? Xian Zuan soon understood Hu Yuhao's intention. After that, Hu Yuhao's hands moved faster and faster. The joysticks and buttons flickered under his control. The human-shaped soul tool moved. At the start, he was only simply walking forward. Following this, he leapt, rolled, turned around, and even did a cartwheel. Time passed second after second. The metallic man only stopped 10 minutes later. Finally, it adopted a half-squat position before straightening. Following this, Hu Yuhao inserted his arms and legs into the empty sides of the metallic man's interior. The control panel that was initially in front of him was retracted to the side of his waist. The soul tool started to move again. Through his 2 spiritual perspectives, Xian Zuan could see that the metallic man was now being controlled by Hu Yuhao's soul power and limbs. It boasted a far greater flexibility now. When Hu Yuhao controlled it and used the ghost shadow perplexing track, Xian Zuan felt like he was being strangled. He was becoming extremely emotional. He saw the results from the outside, and watched how he did it from the inside. The human form soul tool didn't use any offensive soul tools throughout the entire process, but it greatly moved Xian Zuan. The projections started to turn blurry. Everything seemed to return to normal, and the spiritual power that had surged into Xian Zuan's spiritual sea slowly faded away. Impossible. When Xian Zuan recovered from the projection Hu Yuhao had showed him, he shouted without a care. He already stood up at this point, and there were strong undulations of soul power surging from his body. The rare metals that were strewn on the ground started to scatter in the air, and even Hu Yuhao staggered a few steps back before he managed to stabilize himself. In the dorm room, one of them was pacing up and down frantically, while the other remained seated calmly. Neither of them made any other moves. Time passed second after second. Xian Zuan didn't stop perspiring, and in fact started to sweat even more. It started to drip from his jaw, while the back of his shirt was already soaked. He was completely immersed in his thoughts now. His mind was circulating quickly as he pondered. This carried on for 15 minutes before Xian Zuan suddenly stopped. He turned around to face Hu Yuhao suddenly, and the beads of perspiration on his face were flung off by the sudden turn. How many formation arrays did you use? Xian Zuan's voice was trembling. Hu Yuhao replied, 32, impossible. How can it be so few? Did you know, you didn't know? Xian Zuan was muttering to himself as he stared at Hu Yuhao. Hu Yuhao smiled and said, Teacher Xian, I'm only at most class 6 soul engineer. How many formation arrays did you think I'd use to complete this soul tool? Furthermore, you saw its size, internal structure, and physical form. Without adding any offensive tools, there's only a handful of places that can contain formation arrays. How many formation arrays did you think there would be? Xian Zuan replied, then how did you manage to make it move, and even make it fly, without pouring in soul power? Hu Yuhao didn't hide the truth. He said almost naturally, milk bottles. I added 12 class 6 milk bottles. While the soul power in the milk bottles becomes volatile, it happens much slower compared to other soul tools. Theoretically speaking, it can maintain flight for 2 hours without using my own soul power as long as these 12 milk bottles are filled with soul power beforehand. Otherwise, I can engage in an intense fight for 10 minutes, but that will include other offensive soul tools. I won't talk much about the internal design. This is a stupid design, because only soul masters can control this soul tool. After all, milk bottles are only replenished by soul masters. Xian Zuan stared at Hu Yuhao. How did you know that I was researching soul power outflow prevention in milk bottles? Hu Yuhao was stunned. I didn't, you didn't know. Xian Zuan was now the one who was stunned. Then why did you use milk bottles to provide power for this human form soul tool? Hu Yuhao looked at him anxiously and replied, it was the only method I could think of. Teacher Xian, have you really found a way to prevent the outflow of soul power? That's great. If Xian Zuan wasn't lying, the practicality of his human form soul tool would be greatly enhanced. Xian Zuan changed the topic instantly and said, that's not the main point. The main point is, how did you manage to balance the human form soul tool? Doesn't every joint have to be controlled using formation arrays? There's also the linkage and coordination between the arrays. Problems will definitely arise. Did you think about all these problems? Hu Yuhao replied, I thought of them. Not everything requires formation arrays. Then what did you use? Xian Zuan probed. Hu Yuhao chortled and replied, sorry. Teacher Xian, I can't tell you. That's a secret. Xian Zuan turned gloomy. Hu Yuhao answered his questions at the start, but claimed that it was a secret when he got to the critical questions. He was obviously playing with him. Xian Zuan wasn't concerned about Hu Yuhao's craftsmanship. The metallic man might have many problems. He found 5 to 6 problems that couldn't be resolved right away. However, the key thing was his concept. He had only used 32 formation arrays before he managed to make the metallic man move. It was practical, and didn't require Hu Yuhao to use his soul power to make it move. At least it could be used to escape. Xian Zuan was puzzled by all this. He started to become very restless. Impressive. Hu Yuhao, you are impressive. Xian Zuan looked at him and was filled with emotions. He knew that Hu Yuhao wasn't lying. That human form soul tool couldn't have been created by him alone. The complex structure that it possessed couldn't have been completed in just 2 years. It must be related to his sect. How should Xian Zuan go about asking him then? Xian Zuan knew that this was all Hu Yuhao's grand ploy to attract him. On the surface, he said that he didn't have 10 new creations. However, he came up with a product that represented the essence of the research that Xian Zuan had always been invested in. How could he not be interested? Xian Zuan took in a deep breath and said, Yuhao, tell me if this is agreeable. I don't want your detailed production method. I just want to know the concept and ideas behind this human form soul tool. I'll trade for them with the sealed milk bottle formula that I just completed. You need to know that this formula will change the whole development of soul tools. I haven't reported it to the hall yet. But once more data is collected, I believe this formula will become one of the most important bits of research in the illustrious Virtue Hall. Do you want to make a trade? Hu Yuhao was a little hesitant now on this. As a Class 6 soul engineer, he knew that Xian Zuan was right. The appearance of sealed milk bottles was bound to change the world of soul tools. Ordinary people wouldn't find it so difficult to control soul tools anymore. Although the price of sealed milk bottles was bound to be astronomical, they could solve the huge power problem when used on human-form soul tools. Even though this didn't solve the root of the problem, it wasn't completely out of the question to create huge milk bottles for test subject 1. Thinking about it gave Hu Yuhao the chills. Do you want to exchange? Xian Zuan was a little anxious. Do you think my research is inferior to yours? I can tell that your human-shaped soul tool is incomplete, it's only a prototype. If you let me work on it, I can make it a complete human-shaped soul tool in less than 3 years. Hu Yuhao smiled and replied, of course I hope that you can finish it. But I don't think you'll just want this soul tool. Don't forget that I'm showing you 2 products today. Xian Zuan's eyes widened. Are you saying that you have another item that can reach that level of research? Hu Yuhao shook his head and replied, they belong to different categories. However, this second item is also the essence of all my hard work. You were right just now. The human-shaped soul tool is only half done. If I want to complete it, I'll still need to experiment and innovate. However, the second item I'm showing you is completed, take it out then. Xian Zuan said hurriedly. Hu Yuhao nodded and lifted his right hand. The starlight sapphire ring that Xian Zuan had seen in the projection was on Hu Yuhao's index finger. When Xian Zuan saw the ring, his eyes flashed with greed. However, Hu Yuhao's creativity was too important to him, and he quickly retracted his greed and channeled positive energy into his heart. Part 1 end here.